What is going on, guys? My name is Cameron and we are jumping into the Amazing Spider-Man issue 11. And what I've done recently, I've actually picked up the comics that I need to review and stuck them in front of me. So basically I have like a visual representation of how many comics I have to review, and it's really motivating. So I figured, you know what, we're going to stick with the Amazing Spider-Man comics for now, get through the ones that I haven't reviewed. So the latest issue is actually issue 13, so we're going to do 11, 12 and 13, then I'll move over to Spider-Man 2099 and stuff like that. So yeah, it should be pretty easy. It should only take a few days to get through these, so let's do it. Okay, so in the previous issue we saw Spider-Man jumping on the train, being attacked by the Zodiac, protecting Anna Maria, and of course Dr. Octopus in that robot, tagging along for the ride. And it really seems like Dr. Octopus is starting to come back into these comics finally, because he's been in that robot for ages, so it's nice to see that he's being included in these comics a little bit more now, and I cannot wait for his return when it finally happens. So something that I found actually really interesting about this comic, and probably the previous one as well, was that Spider-Man / Peter Parker obviously has Parker Industries around the world, so he's got each and every employee from each Parker Industries around the world all working towards stopping the Zodiac. And I think that's a pretty awesome thing to do, because technically that's like a really big team, and it just kind of shows you what kind of resources Spider-Man has at his disposal because he's the leader of a huge successful company. So it's actually really cool to see stuff like that being implemented into Spider-Man's plans when taking down villains, etc. One of the concerns that I do have with this comic, however, and it's only really nitpicking, but it's just how Spider-Man figured out where the Zodiac were. Like, it's not exactly clear. Sure, it gets revealed a little bit later in the comic, but when I was reading the issue, I kind of just didn't understand. Like, Spider-Man looked up in the sky, he saw this red light or something, and then he automatically knew. And I know it's revealed later on in the comic, I already know that, but in that moment when he like realized where they were, I was just like, what? Like, it kind of threw me off out of the comic a little bit, kind of confused me, because instead of me reading the comic, I was more concerned with how he actually figured it out. So it kind of took away from the experience for me, but of course, as I've already said, you do figure it out later in the comic, but I feel like you should have probably figured it out there and then when he actually saw the light in the sky, instead of us finding out later on. I was also a little bit confused with why that guy randomly disappeared. Like, was that guy from the future and he travelled back in time and they changed something so he like ceased to exist or something like that? Maybe you guys can help me out with that, because I was slightly confused. Maybe I just missed something and I didn't realise it. So yeah, just let me know in the comments below, because maybe you guys picked up on it and you actually know why and you can let me know, etc. So thank you in advance. There was also something back there that I think I should talk about, and that was when the robot jumped down and landed on like these villains, and of course these guys are actually civilians being controlled by the Zodiac, and so you actually see Spider-Man notice this first and having to tell the robot, of course, who is actually Dr. Octopus, to be careful because these guys are actually civilians. And I think that's a huge insight into how Dr. Octopus sees things in terms of what he was like when he was Superior Spider-Man. Like, he was very aggressive, and it just kind of suggests that Dr. Octopus still has that aggressive nature about himself, like not even realizing that these villains are in fact civilians being controlled by the Zodiac, and instead just straight up landing on these guys, probably breaking the bones, and just being far too aggressive. So it's like a little throwback to Superior Spider-Man, and if Dr. Octopus is going to be returning, that aggressive nature will most likely be taken out on Spider-Man, and I very much look forward to it. You've also got to remember that this is an Amazing Spider-Man comic, and so the humour is very much existent. I particularly love the part that we just passed, where Spider-Man does an armpit punch, and I love how Scorpio kind of took the time out of his day to kind of say, ow, that really hurt. Usually you don't see a villain do that sort of stuff, so it was really cool to see that interaction between the two of them. I also feel like we had our eyes opened a little bit in this issue, because something that Scorpio actually says, it's a giant key, but nobody actually thought what the giant key was for. And I think that's a really interesting way to look at things. That's a really interesting perspective. Everybody just thought that it was a giant Zodiac key that had loads of power, but at the end of the day, it's still a key. So what does this key open? And it's actually a really awesome thing, but I'm not going to talk about it until it's actually revealed in the comic, so I'll wait to get to that. But as the comic progresses, we learn that the Zodiac key actually has a tie to Scorpio's family and his grandfather and his ancestors before that, and all that crazy business. And Scorpio actually manages to open this door with the Zodiac key. Something that I didn't think this comic would actually do. I was more or less imagining it as Spider-Man would probably stop him before he opens the door, but that is in fact not the case at all. Scorpio manages to open the door, and as he opens it, there's this incredible light blasting through the door, and as he walks in, we get what I would probably refer to as the future of Marvel Comics, and definitely the future of the Amazing Spider-Man comics, as we get the mention of heroes fighting each other, obviously a reference to Civil War 2, we get the mention of Regent, which will be returning in issue 12 and 13. And of course guys, if you don't know who Regent is, then you should definitely check out the Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows saga. That was actually a spin-off saga in the Secret Wars event that had Peter Parker and Mary Jane married with a daughter. And Peter Parker was still Spider-Man, but he was in hiding, and he actually came out of hiding to defeat Regent. And honestly, it's probably one of the best sagas that I've reviewed in a while, so you should seriously check it out. It's so good. Anyway, going back into the comic on screen, as you can see, Spider-Man pushed Scorpio into the door and locking him inside. Now, we didn't exactly see him die or anything, so I imagine he probably will return. And who knows, Spider-Man might have actually pushed him into the future. So maybe a year from now, Scorpio will reappear again. Oh my days, this issue is crazy, and towards the end there we got Dr. Octopus saying that he will return and his master plan is going to come into fruition. And so I cannot wait for that, but the thing is, he says his superior return. So does that mean that he's going to return as Superior Spider-Man? What's going to happen? If Superior Spider-Man actually comes back, I will backflip off the face of the earth and crash through the sun. And it just gets me so hyped up, I cannot wait. But until then guys, the issue has just ended, so yeah, you'll have to wait for that. But the next issue is going to be bringing back Regent. And of course, Iron Man will be entering these Amazing Spider-Man comics in the next 2 issues, so check out for that. And of course, Miles Morales will be there as well, so something to look forward to. Now, I'm going to give this issue a 9 out of 10. And it's really strange because a few issues ago, I said that the Amazing Spider-Man comics were like falling behind a little bit and they weren't really being as good, but really it seemed like this Zodiac event and everything like that with Scorpio seemed to be setting up the future of the Amazing Spider-Man comics. Like, we got a look ahead of the future, we got Regent, Norman Osborn, Dr. Octopus, heroes fighting each other. All of that was said to be happening within the year that Scorpio saw. And so it opens a few doors and it gets a few ideas rolling and speculation, and I just cannot wait. And now guys, it's time to end the video, but don't forget to let me know in the comments below what you thought of this awesome issue. What do you think about Dr. Octopus, Norman Osborn returning maybe, and of course Regent? And whilst you're doing that, make sure you hit the like button on this video. Go to the links in the descriptions for me on Twitter and Facebook. I've just done a giveaway on my Twitter, giving out a code, etc. So you can look out for more of those giveaways on there. And if you want to support the channel, you can click the support RVM button on the banner of the channel. And last but not least guys, if you love this channel, if you love this video, hit the subscribe button for more, and I'll see you all next time.